It has been 3 years, 8 months, and 46 days since I last saw Lion, and I'm a mess. I have not been able to come close to starting another relationship with another man, especially since it's completely against the scriptures, since technically Lion is still my husband. But I tell you, y'all, the adversary is a crafty fellow. All kinds of thoughts have gone through my head on those lonely nights. Those lonely nights. Laying in my bed, all alone, remembering how good Lion's big, warm body felt cuddling me at night. Wrapped in his arms, I was protected from the world. In his arms, he touched me and loved me and made me feel like a rare jewel. A voice that sounded so much like my own said that since we never got married on paper, we're not really married. That was the big one, because the adversary almost had me convinced. There were several men over the years that was determined to change my mind. But the truth was, even if you put them all together, they still wouldn't make even a quarter of the man that Lion was. He had ruined me for other men. Most days I was alright. I just focused on being a good mommy to Dawid and a good servant to Yah. And time flew. But it was times like now when my body temperature was above normal and I was plagued with dreams of my husband and the way he touched me, the way he kissed me. And I'm ready to go crazy. I told myself that I didn't need a man. I could just live for Yah, like Shaul said. But the truth was, there were times like now that I craved my husband's touch. Anyway, over the years, I've done a lot of thinking and growing. And one of the major conclusions I've come to is that my mother was a horrible person. And before you judge me for saying that, let me explain. I got my first joint from her when I was 10. My first drink from her, 9. The one and only time I snorted coke, yep, Lovely gave it to me, 14. I almost lost my virginity at 12 because a man was going to pay Lovely $10,000 for it. Had I not run away that night, he would have got it. When I was 17, Lovely tried to talk me into taking on some Johns of my own to make extra money for the house, behind dollar bills back, of course. At the time, I still believed she loved me because it was all I knew. Her dysfunctionality, she told me it was love, and I believed her. But ever since I've become a mommy, I know the truth. I know what a mother that truly loves her child looks like, because I love my son with all my heart and soul. And I would never do the things to him that Lovely had done to me. Dawid, my baby boy, he looks like a miniature version of his father. And I cherish that fact because I feel that I will always have a piece of Lion, even if he has moved on with his life. And I'm pretty sure he has. Single women lined up to get a shot at him, and some that I suspected wasn't all that single. Yeah, it was no doubt in my mind. Some woman had came along and scooped him right up. As for me, I've learned to live for Yah and Dawid, my precious son. He was so smart. 2.5, he already had an impressive vocabulary. I worked with him, studying his letters and his numbers, his colors. It was like he was a sponge. Already he can go outside and pick 10 different edible weeds. He was truly amazing. Sadly, weeds was his only option, because although I had something I had never had before, which was a yard, I have not planted a thing for myself. Looking at my yard, you wouldn't even know that I kept others beautiful for a living. I don't know where my love for growing things has gone, but it was gone. I didn't even enjoy doing it at work. See, I told y'all, I'm a mess. And today was one of my bad days. As I drove home from Kroger's with Dawid sitting in his car seat, the only thing I could think of was how much I wanted my husband's hands on my body. When I reached my house, I picked up Dawid, who had fallen asleep in his car seat on the way home. Carefully, I carried him into the house to finish his nap. Nap time was my relaxing time, something I looked forward to every day. It was that time for me to steal a few minutes in a bath or studying my scriptures. It was a time I learned not to take for granted. After I laid him in his crib, I went back outside for the groceries, but I came up short at the sight of a homeless man sitting on the side of the road. And oh my goodness, he didn't have on any shoes or socks. And it was cold out. It was true, Louisiana didn't get cold like Chicago, but it came close. I ran back into the house and I got a few pair of my comfy, soft winter socks. I didn't have any shoes big enough to fit them, but I had about $35 left for my pay. I needed the money because it was all I had to the end of the week. But dear Yah, this man needed it so much more. I ran up the house and I didn't even stop to think. I just squatted down and began to put the socks on his feet. Sir, it's got to be 10 degrees out here. You'll catch your death from not protecting your feet. After I secured his feet in 2 pair of winter socks, I reached into my pocket and gave him the money. Sir, please take this and get some shoes. Do you need a ride? My son's taking a nap, but we can run you up the road to get you to the shoe store. The man took the money from my hand, but he was in no rush. In fact, he smiled warmly at me, as if he was not only not bothered by the weather, but was in fact comfortable. Sir, do you want to ride? He shook his head. I don't need shoes. I'm here to deliver a message to you. I don't know why, but I sat on the ground next to him. It looked as if he sat on some kind of stool. It was something about this that was so familiar. Do I know you? Probably not. He shook his head. It's time for you to go home. This is my home. Nuria, you have to return to your husband. It had been so long since anyone had called me by that name. Here, I didn't go by Nuria or Butta. I told everyone my name was Megan. I figured it was the only way to keep Mouse and Dania from picking up my trail. I can't, I told him. You can, he stated matter-of-factly. My husband killed my mother. The man shook his head. You're wrong. He did not kill your mother. Excuse me, but I was there. I saw what happened with my own eyes. He gave me a disapproving look. Man, you depend too much on your eyes for truth. What about what you didn't see? Does that mean it didn't happen? I frowned at him, confused. I don't understand. I watched him elbow my mother in the face and break her neck. That's what happened. Why? Because your eyes say so? Yes, that's what I saw. He exhaled. I'm going to try to explain something to you, but it may be hard for your mortal brain to comprehend. I sucked my teeth. Man, did you just call me stupid? That he said, looking at me out the corner of his eye, has yet to be seen. Okay, go ahead. Explain away, sir. Your mother was a host for many unclean spirits. When you conceived, her death was ordained. Why? Her influence on the child would never be allowed. Had she lived, she would have destroyed your son. I sat back and digested that information. Neither of us said anything as my mortal mind raced to understand. You see, on the day that your mother died, it was not lion's blow that killed her. That job was done by a being you could not see. I put my hand to my chest. Oh my goodness, how do you know that? I was there, but I didn't see. My words halted as he rose one eyebrow. Right, I said. Just because I didn't see you didn't mean you weren't there. Yes, child. You're not so stupid after all. So, does that make you like an angel? He shrugged. It's the name you humans have given us, but we prefer messengers. My mouth fell open. I thought about Hebrews 13:2 that says, do not forget to receive strangers, for by doing so, some have unwittingly entertained angels. Your son needs his father, he continued. It's imperative that his training begin soon. Training? Training for what? Come here, boy, the man spoke. He didn't raise his voice above the tone we spoke in, and there was no way Dawid heard him. I opened my mouth to tell him my son was asleep in his crib, but before I could say a thing, the screen door opened and my baby toddled out to the porch. He was surrounded by a light so pure it hurt my eyes to look at. I got up to go to him and wrap him in my arms to protect him from the cold, but the man laid his hand on my shoulders. He is not cold. I sat back down and watched, in amazement, as my son walked toward us. In his little hands was a half-eaten apple. He didn't stop until he stood in front of the man, who put his hand under Dawid's little chin and lifted his face to get a good look at him. The earth is getting ready to go through extreme trial. Warriors are needed. The fight will be fierce. Dawid will be a great warrior, greater than even his father, and a strong soldier for the Ancient of Days and his Messiah. Brace yourself and enjoy the time you have left to live together with your husband and your children. It won't last. He began to stand. Wait a minute, I said, putting my hand on his sleeve. What do you mean it won't last? Is something going to happen to us? He paused and frowned down at me. Why do you ask that? It is not for man to know his tomorrows. Just cherish the time you have. Don't waste it. He began to walk away. Wait, I caught his sleeve again, my heart beating out of control. Why my son? I've already lost so much. It is futile to try and comprehend the Ancient of Days. You'll do better separating the heavens from the earth with your bare hands. He turned to walk away. I reached for him again. I couldn't let him go after dropping a bomb like this on me. I had 100 more questions. But right then, Dawid began to toddle down the road in the opposite direction. Wait, please, I called to him as I turned to retrieve Dawid. I lifted my child that was still surrounded by that glow in my arms and quickly turned back to the man, but he was gone. Even the stool he sat on had vanished. I stood there in the middle of the road, feeling lost. In a matter of minutes, my brain had been overloaded with information. But first things first, I took Dawid back in the house and I set him on the couch. Then I went into our bedroom, into the closet, and I shut the door. "Dawid, come here," I whispered. I held my breath and waited. And after a few seconds, the closet door opened. "What, Mama? What?" he asked, looking up at me before taking a bite out of a new apple. "You heard Mama calling you?" He nodded his head. I picked him up and held him close. Oh my goodness, my son had the ears of a bat. "What, Mama?" he asked, wondering why I was staring at him like he had grown another head. "I want this many apples," he said, holding up 3 fingers. I nodded my head. My love for apples had been passed down to my son. Between the both of us, we ate a bag a day. But apparently, I wasn't the only parent that passed something to him. And I had a feeling that this was only the tip of Dawid's story. I was afraid. Suddenly, I knew as clear as day that we needed Lion. I cannot protect our son by myself. But it had been years. What was I supposed to do? Just pick up the phone and call him? What if he had another woman? What if he didn't want to talk to me? What if he looked at me like he looked at Delilah? Goodness, I'm a mess. I thought this matter over for about a week. And then at the end of the week, I came up with an idea. I went to the bank and I opened up a bank account using my real name and my social security number. And then I waited.